The training simulator exploded in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. Amy Chen rolled behind a concrete barrier as chunks of debris crashed around her. She could hear the mechanical whirring of the malfunctioning combat mech as it spun wildly. Its targeting systems completely fried. But there was something else, a sound that made her blood run cold. Someone was trapped under the wreckage. Amy peered around the barrier and saw him. The Dragon Cadet was pinned beneath a massive piece of the simulator's armor plating. His golden scales flickered with pain, and dark blue blood pooled beneath the metal that had crushed his leg. The other cadets had already evacuated when the simulation went wrong, but this one had been too slow to escape. Every instinct told Amy to run. Dragons were dangerous. Everyone knew that. They were twice the size of humans, with claws that could tear through steel and internal temperatures hot enough to melt plastic. The instructors always warned the other species to keep their distance during training exercises. Dragons worked alone. They preferred it that way. But as Amy watched, the dragon's breathing became labored. The weight of the metal was crushing him, and the malfunctioning mech was still active, sparking dangerously close to his position. If she left him there, he would die. Amy sprinted from her hiding spot toward the wreckage. The broken mech detected her movement and immediately pivoted in her direction, its damaged weapons array charging up for another blast. She dove and slid under its targeting range just as a burst of plasma fire scorched the ground where she had been standing. The dragon looked up at her with surprise in his large amber eyes. His mouth opened slightly, showing rows of sharp teeth, but he said nothing. Amy grabbed the edge of the metal plate and pulled with all her strength. It didn't budge. "Help me," she grunted, positioning herself for better leverage. "Push up when I lift." The dragon stared at her for a moment, clearly confused by her presence. Dragons didn't help other species, and other species certainly didn't help dragons. But as another plasma blast from the malfunctioning mech struck nearby, he placed his powerful hands against the metal and nodded. Amy counted to 3 and pulled while the dragon pushed upward. The metal plate shifted just enough for him to drag his injured leg free. Dark blood stained his golden scales, but he was alive. The mech turned toward them again, its weapons fully charged this time. Amy helped the dragon to his feet, and together they limped toward the exit as fast as they could move. Behind them, the simulator finally overloaded completely, filling the chamber with smoke and the acrid smell of burning circuits. They collapsed in the hallway outside the training room, both breathing heavily. Amy looked at the dragon's injured leg and winced. The scales were cracked and bleeding, and she could see that some of the bones beneath were probably broken. "Why did you do that?" the dragon asked, his voice deep and rough like distant thunder. It was the first time Amy had ever heard one of them speak directly to her. Amy shrugged, suddenly feeling awkward. "You were hurt. I couldn't just leave you there." The dragon tilted his massive head, studying her with those strange amber eyes. "My name is Flame," he said after a long pause. "Amy," she replied. From that day forward, everything changed. Despite the protests of their instructors and the shocked stares of other cadets, Amy and Flame began training together. It started small, sharing a table in the mess hall, partnering up for combat exercises. But gradually, it became something more. Flame taught Amy how to move like a predator, how to use her smaller size and speed to her advantage in ways that human instructors had never considered. He showed her draconic combat techniques that focused on precision strikes rather than brute force. In return, Amy taught Flame about teamwork, about watching out for others instead of only thinking about himself. The other dragons thought Flame was crazy for spending time with a human. Dragons were solitary creatures by nature. They didn't form friendships, especially not with species they considered weak. But Flame found himself drawn to Amy's fearless loyalty and her complete lack of fear around him. She treated him like an equal, not like a dangerous animal to be avoided. Dr. Voss, the crystalline medical officer who oversaw cadet health, expressed concerns to Commander Stone about their unusual partnership. "Dragons are emotionally unstable," Dr. Voss explained, his crystal body chiming softly as he spoke. "Their internal temperatures fluctuate with their moods. When they become angry or stressed, they can become extremely dangerous to those around them." Commander Stone, a gruff human with gray hair and worried eyes, watched Amy and Flame through the observation window of the training facility. They were sparring together, and he could see how perfectly they moved as a team. Amy would dart in low while Flame struck high, and when Flame was off balance, Amy was always there to cover his blind spots. "I understand your concerns, Doctor," Stone said. But look at them. Flame's combat scores have improved by 30% since they started training together, and Amy has learned techniques that our human instructors couldn't teach her in 100 years. Dr. Voss's crystalline form flickered with uncertainty. That may be true, but we know very little about dragon psychology. Their species has never shown this kind of attachment behavior before. We don't know what might happen if their bond is broken or if Flame becomes territorial about her. As if sensing their discussion, Amy and Flame finished their sparring session and looked up at the observation window. Amy waved cheerfully while Flame simply nodded, his golden scales reflecting the training room lights. Over the following months, their friendship deepened in ways that surprised everyone, including themselves. Amy found that she could almost sense Flame's moods, knowing when he was frustrated or pleased even before he showed any outward signs. Flame discovered that he genuinely cared about Amy's well-being, something that went against every instinct his species had evolved. Other cadets began to take notice too. Some were jealous of the unique partnership, while others were simply amazed that a human and a dragon could work so well together. But most kept their distance, still unsure about the wisdom of getting too close to a predator species. The instructors remained divided. Some saw the partnership as a breakthrough in interspecies cooperation. Others worried that they were encouraging a dangerous relationship that could end badly for everyone involved. But as Amy and Flame continued to excel in their training, scoring higher marks than any other cadet pair in the Academy's history, even the skeptics had to admit that something special was happening. Neither Amy nor Flame understood the true nature of what was growing between them. They only knew that they had found something rare and precious in the vast loneliness of space, a friendship that transcended the boundaries of species, instinct, and evolution itself. But as their final Academy assessment approached, that bond would be tested in ways that neither of them could have imagined. Amy floated in the pilot's seat of the small scout ship, watching the dead star grow larger on their view screen. The ancient sun had collapsed millions of years ago, leaving behind only a dark, dense core that bent space around it like a twisted lens. Strange energy readings had been detected near the stellar remnant, and their final Academy assessment was to investigate and report back to Titan Station. Flame sat in the co-pilot's chair beside her, his large frame barely fitting in the seat designed for smaller species. His golden scales reflected the faint light from their instruments, and Amy could see his amber eyes focused intently on the sensor readings. "Energy signatures are getting stronger," Flame reported, his deep voice rumbling through the small cabin. "Whatever is out there, it's big." Amy adjusted their course slightly, keeping the ship at a safe distance from the dead star's gravitational field. They had been partners for 8 months now, and their teamwork had become almost instinctive. She knew that Flame's enhanced senses could detect things that their instruments might miss, while her human intuition often picked up patterns that escaped his more logical mind. "There," Amy pointed at a cluster of metallic objects drifting near the star's outer edge. "Are those ships?" Flame leaned forward, his eyes narrowing as he studied the distant shapes. "Yes, but they're not showing up on our communication channels. No identification signals, no registry markings." Amy felt a chill run down her spine. Ships that operated without proper identification in deep space were usually up to no good. Pirates, smugglers, or worse. She reached for the communication controls to report back to Titan Station, but Flame's hand caught her wrist. "Wait," he said, his scales flickering with concern. "Look at what they're doing." On the view screen, Amy could see the mysterious ships were arranged in a complex formation around something near the dead star. Energy beams flowed between them, creating a web of power that pulsed with unnatural light. Whatever they were building, it was big enough to be dangerous. "We need to get closer," Amy said. "Command needs detailed scans of whatever that is." Flame's internal temperature rose slightly, a sign that he was worried. Amy had learned to read his physical signs over their months together. "That's not a good idea. If they're hostile, we'll stay at maximum sensor range," Amy interrupted. "Just long enough to get clear readings." Flame nodded reluctantly, trusting her judgment even though his dragon instincts screamed danger. Amy guided their ship closer to the mysterious formation, keeping them hidden behind chunks of debris from the dead star's ancient planetary system. Their sensors immediately lit up with data. The unknown ships were using quantum disruptors, highly illegal weapons that could tear apart matter at the subatomic level. They were building some kind of weapon platform using the dead star's gravitational field to amplify their power. "This is bad." Amy whispered, recording everything their sensors detected. If they finished building that thing, they could destroy entire planets. Flame scales were now glowing with alarm. We need to leave now. Send the data back to Titan Station and let the real military handle this. Amy was about to agree when their ship's alarms started screaming. 3 of the unknown vessels had broken off from the main formation and were heading straight for them. Somehow they had been detected. "Hold on!" Amy shouted, throwing their ship into a desperate evasive pattern. The small scout vessel wasn't built for combat, but it was fast and maneuverable. She dove between chunks of stellar debris, using the dead star's twisted gravity to slingshot them away from their pursuers. Flame worked frantically at the co-pilot's controls, trying to boost their engines and send an emergency transmission back to Titan Station. "They're jamming our communications," he reported, "and they're gaining on us." The first quantum disruptor blast missed their ship by meters, but Amy could see the space around them literally tear apart where the beam passed. Another blast and another. The pirates weren't trying to capture them. They were trying to destroy them completely. "There," Flame pointed to a gap in the debris field. "If we can reach that clear space, we might be able to jump to faster than light speed." Amy pushed their engines to maximum power, feeling the ship groan under the strain. Behind them, the pirate vessels fired again, their quantum disruptors creating holes in reality itself. One beam clipped the edge of a massive asteroid, and Amy watched in horror as the entire rock simply disappeared into nothingness. They were almost clear of the debris field when disaster struck. A quantum disruptor beam caught their ship's rear section, and Amy felt the entire vessel shudder as their power systems began to fail. Warning lights flashed across every console, and the smell of burning circuits filled the air. "Power core is destabilizing," Flame shouted over the alarms. "We're going to lose main engines." Amy fought to keep the ship stable as systems failed all around them. The quantum blast had damaged their ship at the molecular level, and the damage was spreading like a disease through their hull. "Can you reach the manual controls for the faster-than-light drive?" Flame was already moving, his massive frame squeezing through the narrow corridor toward the ship's rear sections. Amy could hear him working frantically with tools and emergency systems, trying to jury-rig a solution that would get them home. The pirates fired again, and this time Amy wasn't fast enough to dodge completely. The quantum beam caught their ship's port side, and she felt the hull buckle around her. Emergency force fields activated to keep the air from rushing out, but she could see cracks spreading across the walls like spiderwebs. "Flame, whatever you're doing, do it faster," she called out. "Almost got it," came his reply, but Amy could hear the strain in his voice. The ship's power core suddenly surged with unstable energy, and Amy realized what was about to happen. The quantum damage had created a feedback loop in their main reactor. In seconds, the entire ship would explode. "Flame, get back here now," she screamed, but it was too late. The power core detonated in a cascade of energy that tore through the ship's rear sections. Amy felt herself thrown forward as the explosion ripped through the corridor where Flame had been working. The ship's emergency systems activated, sealing off the damaged areas and ejecting her in an escape pod. But the quantum energy from their exploding reactor caught her before the pod could fully deploy. Amy screamed as the impossible forces tore through her body, breaking down her cells at the most basic level. The pain was beyond anything she had ever imagined, like being burned and frozen and electrocuted all at the same time. Through the agony, she saw Flame's massive form diving toward her in his own escape pod, his scales blazing with desperate light. Somehow, despite the damage to their ship, he had survived and was trying to reach her. The last thing Amy remembered before unconsciousness took her was the sound of Flame's voice over the radio, calling her name with a desperation that seemed to shake the very stars themselves. The medical bay doors slid shut with a soft hiss, cutting off Flame's desperate roars from the corridor outside. Dr. Voss moved between the advanced medical equipment surrounding Amy's bed, his crystalline body chiming softly with each step. The readings were all wrong. Quantum burns simply didn't behave this way. Amy lay unconscious on the bio-bed, her left side a horrific mess of damaged tissue that seemed to shift and change, even as he watched. The quantum energy had torn apart her molecular structure, creating wounds that defied every known principle of medicine. Her cells were literally dissolving and reforming in an endless cycle of destruction. "How long does she have?" asked Dr. Krill, the insectoid surgeon whose compound eyes reflected the medical bay's harsh lights. His forearms moved independently as he adjusted various monitoring devices, each reading more grim than the last. Dr. Voss consulted his instruments again, hoping for some sign of improvement. Hours, perhaps less. Quantum burns don't heal. They just spread until there's nothing left to destroy. I've never seen a human survive this level of cellular damage. Through the thick walls of the medical bay, they could still hear Flame's anguished calls. The dragon had carried Amy's broken body back to Titan Station in a damaged escape pod, refusing to let the rescue teams take her from him. Even now he waited outside the medical facility, his massive form radiating heat that was causing problems for the station's environmental systems. The dragon's distress is becoming a security issue, Commander Stone said as he entered the medical bay. His face was drawn with exhaustion and worry. His internal temperature has risen 15 degrees since we brought her in. If he gets much hotter, he could damage the station's hull. Dr. Voss turned his attention back to Amy's vital signs. Her heart rate was erratic, jumping between dangerously slow and wildly fast. Her brain activity showed patterns unlike anything in his medical database. Most disturbing of all, every time Flame's roars grew louder outside, her readings spiked as if she could somehow hear him through the soundproof walls. "She keeps saying his name," reported Nurse Bell, a gentle humanoid whose blue skin provided a stark contrast to her white medical uniform. "Even unconscious, she calls for him constantly." Amy's parents had arrived from Earth 12 hours ago, their faces showing the particular kind of despair that only comes from watching a child die slowly. They sat beside her bed, holding her uninjured hand and whispering words of comfort that she couldn't hear. "There has to be something," Amy's mother said, her voice breaking. "Some treatment, some procedure. You can't just let her die." Dr. Voss wished he could offer hope, but his medical training demanded honesty. "Mrs. Chen, quantum burns destroy matter at the subatomic level. It's not like normal tissue damage that can heal over time. The energy is literally unmaking her cells faster than her body can replace them." Amy's father looked up from his daughter's bedside, his eyes red with unshed tears. "What about the dragon?" "She keeps calling for him. Maybe seeing him would help somehow." Commander Stone shook his head firmly. "Absolutely not. Dragons are unpredictable when emotionally distressed. His presence could make her condition worse, and he might become violent if he sees how badly she's hurt." As if summoned by their conversation, another roar echoed through the medical bay walls. This one was different, longer, more desperate, and filled with a pain that seemed to resonate in everyone's bones. Dr. Krill's compound eyes clicked as he turned toward the sound. "Interesting," the insectoid surgeon muttered. "Look at her readings during that vocalization." Dr. Voss checked Amy's monitors and felt his crystalline structure flicker with surprise. During Flame's roar, Amy's vital signs had actually stabilized. Her heart rate became steady, her brain activity smoothed into more normal patterns, and even the quantum burns seemed to pause their relentless spread. "Coincidence," Commander Stone said, but his voice lacked conviction. They watched Amy's readings return to their previous chaotic state as Flame fell silent outside. When another roar came 10 minutes later, the same stabilization occurred. Dr. Voss began recording everything, his scientific mind racing with possibilities that seemed to defy logic. "Her cellular regeneration rate increases by 12% when the dragon vocalizes," Dr. Krill observed, his multiple arms working at different control panels simultaneously. "That should be impossible." Amy's eyes fluttered open for the first time since the accident, unfocused and filled with pain. Her lips moved weakly, and Nurse Bell leaned in close to hear her whispered words. "Flame," Amy breathed, her voice barely audible. "Where is Flame?" "She's asking for him again," Nurse Bell reported. Amy's mother gripped her daughter's hand tighter. "We're here, sweetheart. You're safe." But Amy's eyes didn't focus on her parents. Instead, she looked toward the wall that separated her from the corridor where Flame waited. "Need him here," she whispered, her voice growing weaker. "Bonded soul." Dr. Voss froze. The word Amy had just used wasn't in any human language he knew. It was draconic, and not just any draconic word. She had said soulfire, a term from ancient dragon mythology that supposedly described an impossible psychic bond between two beings. Did she just speak draconic? Dr. Krill asked, his compound eyes wide with surprise. Before Dr. Voss could answer, Amy's vital signs crashed. Her heart stopped beating and her brain activity flatlined. The medical team sprang into action. using every piece of technology at their disposal to restart her failing systems. After 3 minutes of frantic work, they managed to get her heart beating again, but she was weaker than before. "We're losing her," Dr. Voss said quietly. "Whatever connection she has with that dragon, being separated from him is making her condition worse." Commander Stone stared at Amy's unconscious form, his military training warring with his basic humanity. Outside, Flame's roars had become almost constant, each one more desperate than the last. The dragon's emotional state was affecting the entire station now, with temperatures rising in multiple sections and some of the smaller alien species seeking shelter from the overwhelming heat. "Sir," Dr. Krill said carefully, "what if the bond she spoke of is real? What if separating them is actually killing her?" Dr. Voss considered the impossible implications. In all his years of medicine, he had never encountered anything like this. But the data was clear. Amy's condition improved when Flame was vocal and deteriorated when he was silent. If there truly was some kind of psychic connection between them, then keeping them apart might be the worst possible treatment. "It's too dangerous," Commander Stone insisted. "Dragons are unstable under the best circumstances. One that's emotionally compromised could kill everyone in the medical bay." Amy's heart stopped again, and this time it took 5 minutes to restart. Her quantum burns had spread further up her torso, and Dr. Voss could see that they were running out of time. Whatever decision they made, it had to be soon. "Please," Amy's mother begged, tears streaming down her face. "If it might help her, we have to try." Amy's heart stopped for the 3rd time in 6 hours, and Dr. Voss knew they were out of options. Her quantum burns had spread across her entire left side, and her body was shutting down system by system. The medical equipment around her bed beeped frantically as her life signs faded to almost nothing. "She's not going to survive another cardiac arrest," Dr. Krill said quietly, his compound eyes reflecting the harsh medical bay lights. "Her body simply can't take much more damage." Through the walls, Flame's roars had changed. What had started as desperate calls had become something else entirely. A deep, mournful sound that seemed to shake the very structure of Titan Station. The dragon's internal temperature had risen so high that the corridor outside the medical bay was becoming dangerous for other species to enter. Amy's parents sat beside her bed, holding her hands and whispering final goodbyes. Her mother's tears fell onto the biobed's sensors, and her father's voice cracked as he told her how proud they were of her courage. But even in her dying state, Amy's lips moved weakly. Nurse Bell leaned close again, straining to hear her whispered words. "Flame," Amy breathed, her voice barely a ghost of sound. "Soulfire, dying, need..." Then she said something that made everyone in the medical bay freeze. Speaking in perfect Draconic with a pronunciation that should have been impossible for human vocal cords, she called out a phrase that Dr. Voss recognized from his xenobiology studies, Kashar Velnoth. "What did she say?" Commander Stone asked, his face pale with worry. Dr. Voss's crystalline body flickered with amazement and fear. "She said half of my soul. That's not possible. Humans can't speak ancient Draconic, and they certainly can't pronounce those particular sounds." Dr. Krill's multiple arms stopped moving across his control panels. "Unless she's not entirely human anymore." The implications hung in the air like a charged particle field. If Amy and Flame had somehow formed the legendary Soulfire bond, then they were no longer two separate beings. They had become something new, something that couldn't survive when split apart. Amy's vital signs dropped even lower, and Dr. Voss made a decision that went against every safety protocol in the station's regulations. "Open the medical bay doors," he ordered. "Absolutely not," Commander Stone said. "I won't risk the entire medical staff for one cadet, no matter how much potential she shows." "Sir," Dr. Krill interrupted, "look at these readings. Her cellular degeneration rate is accelerating. If we don't do something in the next 10 minutes, she'll be dead regardless of what risks we take." Amy's mother looked up from her daughter's bedside, her eyes fierce with desperation. "Let him in. If there's even a chance that seeing him could help her, you have to try." Flame's roar echoed through the walls again, and this time it was different. Longer, more complex, almost like language. Dr. Voss realized that the dragon was actually calling to Amy in Draconic, using words and phrases that spoke of ancient bonds and shared souls. "He's not just making noise," Dr. Voss said with sudden understanding. "He's trying to reach her through whatever connection they share. Commander Stone looked at Amy's failing vital signs, then at her parents' desperate faces, and finally at the medical staff who were watching a miracle patient die because of regulations designed to protect them from theoretical dangers. "Fine," he said quietly, "but the moment that Dragon shows any sign of aggression, we sedate him and drag him out of here." Dr. Voss moved to the medical bay controls and began the sequence to open the doors. Clear a path from her bed to the entrance. Give him room to move without getting tangled in the equipment. The doors slid open with a soft hiss, and the temperature in the medical bay immediately rose 10 degrees. Flame's massive form filled the doorway, his golden scales glowing with heat and stress. But when he saw Amy lying unconscious on the bio bed, something extraordinary happened. The angry red glow faded from his scales, replaced by a soft golden light that seemed to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat. His amber eyes, which had been wild with desperation in the corridor, became focused and calm. He moved toward Amy's bed with careful, deliberate steps, his massive claws making no sound on the medical bay floor. "Incredible," Dr. Krill whispered. His stress indicators just dropped to normal levels. Flame reached Amy's bedside and looked down at her broken form. His great head lowered until his forehead almost touched hers, and he began to speak in Draconic. But these weren't the desperate roars they had heard from outside. These were gentle words, soft as a whisper, in a language that was older than human civilization. Amy's vital signs immediately stabilized. Her heart rate became steady and strong. Her brain activity smoothed into healthy patterns, and most shocking of all, her quantum burn stopped spreading. "That's impossible," Dr. Voss said, checking and rechecking his instruments. "Quantum damage doesn't just stop. It continues until there's nothing left to destroy." Flame carefully placed one massive claw on Amy's forehead, being incredibly gentle despite his size and strength. The golden glow from his scales seemed to flow through his touch into Amy's damaged body, and everyone in the medical bay watched in amazement as her quantum burns began to actually reverse their progress. Her cellular regeneration rate just increased by 400%, Dr. Krill reported, his compound eyes wide with disbelief. The quantum damage is being repaired at the molecular level. Amy's eyes fluttered open, and for the first time since the accident, they were clear and focused. She looked up at Flame's massive face and smiled weakly. "You came," she whispered in perfect Draconic. "I will always come," Flame replied in the same language, his deep voice rumbling with emotion. Dr. Voss recorded everything, knowing that he was witnessing something that would change xenobiology forever. The bond between Amy and Flame wasn't just emotional or psychological. It was physical, cellular, possibly even quantum mechanical. They had somehow become two halves of a single living system. "How is this possible?" Commander Stone asked, staring at the readings that showed Amy's quantum burns continuing to heal at an impossible rate. "Soulfire," Dr. Voss said quietly. "We always thought it was mythology, but we're seeing it happen in real time. They've formed a bond that transcends individual biology." Flame never moved from Amy's side, his claw remaining gently on her forehead as golden light continued to flow between them. His own scales began to dull slightly as he shared his life force with her, but his amber eyes never wavered from her face. "Is he healing her by giving her his own life energy?" Amy's father asked. Dr. Krill nodded slowly. "It appears so. And somehow her human resilience is amplifying his natural draconic healing abilities. They're not just sharing energy. They're enhancing each other at the genetic level." Amy's quantum burns continued to fade, replaced by healthy new tissue that seemed to shimmer with inner light. Her vital signs grew stronger by the hour, and Dr. Voss began to believe something he had thought impossible just minutes before. She was going to live. For 3 days, Flame never left Amy's side. The massive dragon remained perfectly still beside her medical bed, one claw gently resting on her forehead, while golden energy flowed between them in a steady stream. Dr. Voss had set up monitoring equipment around both of them, recording data that defied everything medical science thought it knew about healing and cellular regeneration. Amy's quantum burns were disappearing. Not just healing, actually reversing at the molecular level as if the damage had never occurred. Dr. Krill worked frantically at his multiple control stations, trying to understand the biological mechanisms that made such healing possible. "Her DNA is being rewritten," the insectoid surgeon reported, his compound eyes reflecting amazement. The quantum damage destroyed her genetic code, but somehow it's rebuilding itself with new patterns we've never seen before. Dr. Voss examined the cellular samples under his most powerful microscopes. Amy's human cells were still recognizably human, but they now contained trace elements that matched Flame's draconic physiology. Somehow, the soulfire bond had allowed them to share genetic information across species barriers that should have been impossible to cross. "And the dragon?" Dr. Voss asked. Dr. Krill gestured toward Flame's readings. "His scales are becoming more dull each day as he transfers life energy to her. But look at his neural activity. His brain patterns are developing new pathways that mirror human emotional processing. They're literally becoming part of each other." The medical bay had become a place of pilgrimage for xenobiologists from across the galaxy. Scientists who had spent their entire careers studying interspecies biology crowded around the observation windows, watching two beings accomplish something that violated every law of genetics and evolution. Dr. Sarah Kim, the station's head of xenobiology, stood beside Dr. Voss as they reviewed the latest test results. "This changes everything," she said quietly. "If bonding can overcome species barriers at the genetic level, we'll need to completely rewrite our understanding of how life itself works." Amy stirred on the third day, her eyes opening to find Flame's amber gaze watching her with infinite patience. His massive head was lowered close to hers, and she could feel the warmth radiating from his scales. But more than that, she could sense his emotions as clearly as her own, his relief, his exhaustion, and his absolute determination to keep her alive. "How do you feel?" Dr. Voss asked, moving to check her vital signs. Amy tried to sit up and was surprised by how strong she felt. The quantum burns that had covered her left side were completely gone, replaced by new skin that seemed to have a faint golden shimmer. "Different," she said honestly. "I can feel him in my mind. His thoughts, his emotions. Is that normal?" "Nothing about this is normal," Dr. Voss replied, but his tone was kind. "You've both undergone changes that shouldn't be possible. You're still human, but you're also something new." Flame lifted his head slowly, his movements careful and deliberate. 3 days of constant energy transfer had left him weakened, his golden scales now dim and cracked. But when he looked at Amy, his eyes still burned with the same fierce protectiveness they had always held. "The bond is permanent," he said, his deep voice rougher than usual from exhaustion. "We cannot be separated again without risking both our lives." Dr. Kim stepped forward with her scanner, eager to document the changes in both of them. "Amy, can you try speaking Draconic again?" Amy nodded and found that the ancient language came to her as naturally as breathing. The complex sounds that should have been impossible for human vocal cords flowed from her lips with perfect pronunciation. When she spoke, Flame's scales flickered with brighter light, and she could feel his approval through their shared connection. "And Flame," Dr. Kim continued, "how do you feel about Amy's emotional state?" The dragon tilted his massive head, considering the question with a thoughtfulness that was new to his species. "I understand now why humans form groups and families," he said slowly. "The connection to others makes you stronger, not weaker. My people have been wrong about this for generations." Dr. Voss recorded everything, knowing that his research would revolutionize medicine across the galaxy. But more than the scientific implications, he was witnessing something beautiful. Two beings who had found a way to transcend the limitations of their individual natures through the power of their bond. "There are side effects," Dr. Krill warned as he reviewed their latest scans.
"Amy, your healing abilities are now enhanced far beyond normal human levels."
"You can recover from injuries that would kill most people, but you also require more energy to maintain your enhanced metabolism." Amy flexed her hands and was amazed at how quickly a small cut on her finger sealed itself. "And Flame, your emotional range has expanded significantly," Dr. Kim told the dragon. "You're now capable of empathy and emotional connections that your species has never shown before. But you've also gained strategic thinking abilities that match the best human tacticians." Over the following days, other cadets came to visit, drawn by rumors of the impossible healing they had witnessed. They found Amy and Flame sitting together in the medical bay's recovery area, communicating as much through their mental bond as through spoken words. Ben Rodriguez, a human cadet who had trained with them, stared in amazement at Amy's complete recovery. "We thought you were dead for sure. Quantum burns don't heal." "They do now," Amy said with a smile, and Flame's scales flickered with shared amusement. Lisa Park, an alien cadet whose species was known for their analytical minds, studied them both with scientific curiosity. Can you teach others to form similar bonds? Flame considered the question carefully. The soul-fire bond cannot be forced or learned like a skill. It must grow naturally from trust, loyalty, and willingness to sacrifice for another. Most beings are not capable of the depth of connection required. But even as he spoke, other cadet pairs began spending more time together, hoping to develop stronger partnerships. The example of Amy and Flame had shown them what was possible when two beings truly understood and supported each other. Dr. Voss published his preliminary findings, and within days, medical facilities across the galaxy were requesting copies of his research. The possibility of healing previously fatal injuries through interspecies bonding opened up entirely new fields of treatment and therapy. You've started something remarkable, Commander Stone told Amy and Flame as they prepared for their final medical evaluations. The Galactic Council wants to study your bond officially and possibly establish new protocols for interspecies partnerships. Amy looked at Flame, feeling his thoughts merge with her own as they considered the implications. They had saved each other's lives, but in doing so, they had also given hope to countless others who had believed that the barriers between species could never truly be overcome. We're ready, Amy said, speaking for both of them. If our bond can help others understand what's possible between different species, then everything we went through was worth it. Flame nodded his massive head in agreement, his scales glowing with renewed strength as Amy's determination flowed through their shared connection. Together they had proven that love and loyalty could literally rewrite the laws of biology itself. 6 months after her recovery, Amy stood in the Academy's main assembly hall wearing the distinctive uniform of a bonded pair, a new military designation that had been created specifically for her and Flame. Golden threads wove through the standard cadet colors, marking them as something unique in the galaxy's military history. Flame sat beside her on the stage, his scales now bright and healthy again, though they retained the subtle patterns that had appeared during their bonding. When he moved, Amy could feel the shift in his muscles through their connection. When she breathed, he unconsciously matched her rhythm. They had become two halves of a single warrior. Dr. Voss stood at the podium, addressing an audience that included military leaders, scientists, and representatives from dozens of species across the galaxy. His research on the soul-fire phenomenon had been published in every major medical journal, and the implications were still being understood. The bond between Amy and Flame has given us unprecedented insight into the potential for interspecies cooperation, Dr. Voss explained, his crystalline body chiming softly as he gestured toward them. Their shared healing abilities, enhanced cognitive functions, and perfect combat coordination represent a new form of evolution, driven by choice rather than biology. In the audience, Admiral Chen, Amy's own grandmother and one of the highest-ranking humans in the galactic military, watched with pride and amazement. She had seen many remarkable things in her long career, but nothing had prepared her for watching her granddaughter transcend the very limitations of her species. The practical applications are extraordinary, Dr. Krill added from his position at the data display. Bonded pairs show reaction times 50% faster than individual operatives, tactical thinking that combines the best of both species' abilities, and healing rates that make them nearly impossible to keep down in combat. Commander Stone stepped forward to present Amy and Flame with their graduation honors. Cadets Chen and Flame, you have achieved the highest scores in Academy history. Your tactical simulations, combat evaluations, and teamwork assessments have set new standards for military excellence. But the real test had come during their final mission, when pirates had attacked a civilian transport near the Outer Rim. Amy and Flame had been sent as part of the rescue operation. Working together, they had accomplished what an entire squadron might have struggled with, using their enhanced abilities and perfect coordination to save hundreds of lives. Amy remembered the moment when she had used her enhanced healing to survive a direct hit from a plasma cannon, then used her new tactical abilities to coordinate Flame's attack on the pirate flagship. They had moved like a single organism with two bodies, each compensating for the other's weaknesses while amplifying their strengths. The galaxy is changing, Admiral Chen said as she stood to address the assembly. For too long we have seen the differences between species as barriers to overcome. Amy and Flame have shown us that those differences can become sources of strength, when approached with true understanding and commitment. After the ceremony, Amy and Flame walked through the Academy's corridors one last time, before shipping out to their first official assignment. Other cadets stopped to watch them pass, some with admiration, others with curiosity, and a few with the kind of envy that comes from witnessing something extraordinary. "Look," Flame said softly, nodding toward a corner of the training facility. Amy followed his gaze and smiled. A human cadet named Alex was working closely with Vera, a young member of the crystalline healer species. They moved together with a kind of natural coordination that suggested a deep bond was forming between them. Nearby, 2 other cadets from different species were practicing combat techniques that required absolute trust in each other. "It's spreading," Amy observed, feeling Flame's satisfaction through their connection. In the months since their recovery, dozens of cadet pairs had begun developing closer partnerships. While none had achieved the full soulfire bond that Amy and Flame shared, many had formed relationships that went far beyond normal military cooperation. The barriers between species were beginning to break down as beings discovered what was possible when they truly opened themselves to others. Dr. Voss approached them as they prepared to leave. "I wanted to thank you both," he said. "Your bond has revolutionized not just medicine, but our entire understanding of what life can become." "What do you mean?" Amy asked. The crystalline doctor gestured toward the academy around them. "Injury rates are down 30% because cadets are looking out for each other more carefully. Cooperation between species has improved dramatically, but most importantly, we're seeing the first signs of other pairs developing enhanced abilities through emotional bonding." Flame's amber eyes reflected his curiosity. "Others are achieving soulfire?" "Not full soulfire," Dr. Voss clarified. "But we're documenting cases of enhanced reflexes, improved healing, and even limited empathic connections between bonded pairs. It seems that your example has shown others what's possible when they commit fully to trusting someone from another species." As they boarded the transport that would take them to their first assignment, Amy looked back at Titan Station one last time. The academy that had trained them was now teaching new courses on interspecies bonding, empathic connection, and cooperative tactics. The curriculum had been completely rewritten to emphasize partnership over individual achievement. "Do you think we made the right choice?" Amy asked as they settled into their seats for the journey ahead. Flame's massive form filled the transport's reinforced seating area, but his presence felt comforting rather than imposing. Through their bond, Amy could sense his absolute certainty. "We showed the galaxy what beings can become when they choose to trust completely in someone different from themselves," he said. How could that be anything but right? Their destination was a frontier world where tensions between different species had been escalating toward violence. Their mission was to investigate the conflicts and recommend solutions. But Amy suspected that their real purpose was simply to be seen working together, to demonstrate the possibilities that existed when cooperation replaced competition. As their transport entered faster than light travel, Amy reflected on how much had changed since that day in the training simulator, when she had chosen to save an injured dragon. That single act of compassion had grown into something that was reshaping the galaxy's understanding of what life could become. Through the viewports, she could see the stars stretching into lines of light as they traveled toward their new assignment. Beside her, Flame's breathing was slow and steady, and through their bond, she could feel his excitement about the challenges ahead. They were no longer just Amy and Flame. They were proof that the barriers between species were illusions, that consciousness itself could evolve beyond the limitations of biology, and that the strongest force in the universe was not gravity or nuclear energy, but the willingness of one being to sacrifice everything for another. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders, but Amy knew that the greatest wonder of all was the connection she shared with the dragon beside her. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, two beings who had become something greater than the sum of their parts, through the simple power of choosing to trust completely in each other.